This rock is a bomb. No, not that kind of bomb. It's what we call a volcanic bomb. It wasn't carried here by water or eroded out of a cliff. It was thrown here, through the air, by a volcano. During my trip to Craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho, the famous Shawn took us through the amazing lava flows out here and showed us the spatter cones, cinder cones, and huge volcanic bombs. And in today's video, we're going to talk about what these features are, how they form, and what they tell us about ancient and potentially future volcanic eruptions. First, what is a volcanic bomb? A volcanic bomb is a blob of molten lava that's ejected from a volcano, and it's still partially molten while flying, and then solidifies when it hits the ground.
So we're looking at the south face of Broken Top Hill. And what's interesting here is you can see spaced out every like 20 feet or so are these big kind of rounded bulbous blobs. There's one here, there's one there, there. These are basically lava bombs that were ejected from that vent down there and fell onto the landscape. So these were big blobs of molten lava, fell out of the sky and landed along with all the cinders and all the other material that was being erupted. They've obviously had to suffer the elements, so now they're fractured and cracked and stuff.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
But that's pretty big, right? I mean, look at the size of that.
Come look at it up
And then
close.
sometimes when they hit the ground, they flow a little bit. You can see this one actually has almost like little ripple, almost like folded ripple marks on the surface right here.
So it landed and kind of like...
Yeah, the surface was still solidified
soft,
but pliable enough that it could deform into these little kind of wrinkled faces here.
That's so funny.
So as it's all hitting this hillside, it's not completely solidified such that the whole hillside sort of slowly flowing and just like oozing a little bit.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I
Lava
love
bombs
that.
are pretty cool. And they come in so many shapes and sizes.
Look at that one up there.
Yeah.
So big.
Oh, big one up there. So that tells you sort of the energy level of the eruption. It was able to throw those big rounded blobs out of the vent, which is a good, few hundred yards back that way.
Wow. There's also a size component to what is technically defined as a bomb. Volcanic bombs must be over 64 millimeters or 6.4 centimeters in diameter. So these huge ones at Craters of the Moon absolutely count as bombs. But volcanoes often erupt smaller materials, so if it isn't large enough to be a bomb, we call it lapilli, cinders, or ash. But one cool thing about bombs is that because they're so large and they remain molten in the air, they can deform in flight. And that often leads to bizarre shapes. For example, spindle or fusiform bombs are elongated. They form when a lava blob spins and stretches in flight. There's also bread crust bombs, which look like cracked bread. There's spherical or balloon bombs, which form when surface tension dominates and lava stays hot enough to remain rounded. There's blocky bombs, which are angular and often form from more viscous lava. And then there's, of course, the ribbon or cow pie bombs, like the flattened blobs we showed earlier. These are very common in basaltic lava fountain or spatter cone settings. Volcanic bomb shapes tell us about the lava's viscosity, the gas content, and the bomb's flight time, rotation, and cooling rate. But in my previous videos with Shawn about Craters of the Moon and Yellowstone National Park, which have very different volcanic material, one is completely basaltic or mafic, and the other is completely rhyolitic, or what we call felsic, we mentioned how basaltic eruptions are typically less explosive than the more felsic ones, like the rhyolite eruptions. So one might wonder, how did this clearly basaltic area of Craters of the Moon produce volcanic bombs when basaltic eruptions are supposed to be less explosive? Well, just because we say basaltic eruptions are less explosive than more felsic ones doesn't mean they aren't explosive at all. I mean, we're seeing an example of explosivity in a basaltic eruption right now in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, where currently visitors are getting rained on by rocks, at least at the time of filming this. And it turns out that the low viscosity or runny nature of basaltic lava relative to rhyolitic lava is actually better for bomb formation. Bombs tend to be most common in basaltic lava. Sometimes they form in andesitic lava, which is an intermediate between basalt and rhyolite. But they're less common in rhyolitic systems because the highly viscous lava breaks into fragments instead of forming blobs. Basalt also forms, in my opinion, much prettier bombs and bomb textures because it's more fluid. So when it hits the ground and deforms, we get to see really cool features like the flow structures we saw with Shawn. Now onto the cones that produce the bombs. There are various types of cones at craters of the moon. We have Spatter, we have Cinder. So what's the difference and which ones produce bombs? The short answer is that cinder cone volcanoes erupt smaller material like cinders or lapilli and ash, while spatter cones erupt the bigger, blobby, spattery material. But Shawn took us through and showed us some examples that really highlight the variation even amongst the same type of cone in terms of what they can produce.
This hill looks really different than that hill, kind of more rounded and low. So why?
Yeah, so great observation, Rachel. So we've got two distinct vents here, volcanoes. We have Big Cinder Butte down here to the south. It's more forested, it's taller, it's 700 feet tall. It's the tallest cinder cone in the monument. And it's that classic cinder cone shape, right? So kind of steep sides made out of cinders. There's a little crater at the top, which you can't see. And then we have Broken Top, which is just this weird, more like a mound. It's less steep. It's at least, I mean, it looks less forested. We're also looking at the south-facing side. But the interesting thing is that's a true cinder cone, and Broken Top's kind of a weird one. So this is a case where there was an eruption about 2,000 years ago. This is the youngest vent in the monument, and the eruption must have taken place on a particularly windy day, because as the vent was being, as material was being ejected out of the vent and lava and cinders were being thrown out of the vent, the wind blew that material downwind and created that enormous mound and pile of material there. The vent for this is actually just beyond the small here in front of us here.
Oh my God.
So you literally would have been standing right here as stuff was being thrown out of the vent if you were here 2,000 years ago. We might have even been safe right here because like we're on the upwind side, but just on the other side, all the material was piling up to several hundred feet to form that butte there, that hill.
Nobody thinks about like wind-blown lava rock.
when you have eruptions that involve fine material like cinders or ash or whatever, the wind can have a big control on how that stuff gets distributed.
That's wild. So we have cinder cone volcano and then hill.
Well, we have two cinder cones, a classic one, textbook example, and then one that's been highly modified by the wind, where there's not a crater at the top. The material never blew out of the summit of that hill. It actually came out of the base of the hill, or what is now the base of the hill, and then all the material was blown downwind and accumulated there.
So interesting.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, welcome to Idaho's weather, right?
So this one's actually the vent and the cone in one place.
Right. But different than the cinder cones, right? So like it's a little bit difference in the eruption. It's not erupting as gas-rich, frothy material and as small of material as a cinder cone. It's more sticky, pasty, basketball-sized blobs of lava that are sticking together and accumulating around the vent, and that's what's building the cone up. So it's called a spatter cone, just like the ones that have been erupting in Iceland over the last couple of years.
Oh.
So each one of these individual kind of rounded particles in the spatter cone were actually thrown airborne during the eruption, landed on the ground, flattened out a little bit, kind of like a cow pie, and that is how the spatter cone added mass and built up the cone during the eruption. So each one of these, it's incredible to think about how much force it took to eject something of this size. But a lot of these have quite a bit of holes in them, gas bubbles, and so their mass or their weight isn't necessarily what you'd think it is. They're actually kind of pretty lightweight overall, but still pretty big size.
So what makes it spattery versus cindery?
I think it's just where it evolves in the eruption. So here we have like a couple of these spatter cones aligned in this northwest southeast direction. And so you usually start out with a fissure, like a big crack, lava pouring out, fairly runny, hot lava that's flowing out. But then as the progression starts to wane, that lava is no longer quite as hot and it's no longer as runny. It becomes a little bit more sticky. The fissure tends to get blocked up in some places, and so it tends to get consolidated into these individual vents along the fissure, and that's when it starts evolving into more of these spatter cones. So this undoubtedly was a longer fissure eruption that in its last few stages became like these spatter cones. It just starts spitting out spatter. So this would have been the last maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks even, of the eruption. This specific eruption's around 2,000 years old. That's the youngest of these craters of the moon eruptions. We had 8 eruptions from 15,000 years to 2,000 years ago, and this is the most recent of those events. And very good chance that sometime in the future, next week, next year, or 1,000 years from now, we have some other event in the area. We still feel like this area is still volcanically active. Some of the things I like to point out are just sort of the texture of the material that makes up the cone, these sort of consolidated chunks of lava that was still hot enough that it fused together. We call this agglutinate, so it has a fun word. When it hits the ground, it's still sometimes molten and runny, and in places like right here, you can see where it actually ran back down into the vent. So some of the lava was still molten when it hit the ground and was able to flow back down into the vent. You can see some of the flow lines there with the stretch marks in the lava.
Yeah. Why doesn't the hole get covered up?
Right, so it's ejecting material during the eruption, right? So we're evacuating that plumbing system and pumping lava to the surface, blowing it out onto the surface, airborne. It hits the ground, still hot, still semi-molten or completely molten, and then it starts to ooze back in. But that's usually at the last stages of the eruption, right? So the gas pressure is what's driving the stuff out.
And then it solidifies.
Once the gas pressure is gone, you still have lava down in the system, but the gas that was really driving the eruption has largely been released.
Yeah.
And so now the eruption's over. We see these with modern eruptions like in Hawaii or Iceland. You can just watch these things even on like a webcam, like play out it to their full extent. And sometimes it's very quick. The last time I was in Iceland, it was very apparent and dramatic, I think, in terms of how quickly the eruption went from full-on fountaining to like being completely over with in like 5 or 10 minutes.
Wow.
And so once the gas is no longer there to throw the material out, then that can kill the eruption. The other thing to think about too is as you build up the spatter cone, it takes more gas pressure to get stuff out of the vent and throw it out onto the landscape. So as you build the cone, you're making it harder for the lava to escape out of the vent and get onto the landscape.
Oh, that's true. Okay, side note, come here. Do you see what I'm seeing? Is that a credit card? Can you zoom in on that?
Oh yeah, someone's credit card on there.
I think I could get it. I don't know if I could get out because it looks like it's all pretty overhanging.
You are
right
the
there.
rock climber.
I am the rock climber, so I'm intrigued with the challenge.
Oh my god, that is so funny.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Obviously the hole doesn't look very deep from here, but how far was the material down in the ground when it was actually coming? Like, if that makes sense.
I mean, the source for
the source.
It's probably kilometers down. I mean, it's like.
Oh, wow.
It's coming. So there's usually like, it depends. I don't know, because we haven't seen this system erupt, so we don't know how the plumbing system works. But if we look at kind of other eruptive sites like Hawaii or Iceland is sort of an analog, usually you have a deeper magma source that's maybe like 10, 15 kilometers down, but then that's feeding a shallower body. It's coming up and spreading out laterally. And that's maybe only like 3 or 4 kilometers down. So probably something at that range. And then that's feeding a system that's bringing it up to the surface. But these are little baby volcanoes. Really everything you're seeing out here would be highly tourist attractive eruptions. So, we think of volcanoes like scary and like, oh no, like we need to stay away from them. But as soon as I hear there's earthquakes in this area and some ground deformation, I'm getting into my truck and I'm driving out here because the fireworks could begin soon, and you could be pretty reasonably close to these eruptions when they're taking place and enjoy them. It's not
I never thought about that. That's so true.
It's not a hazardous eruption. Like next time Yellowstone erupts, like I don't want to be in the area, but next time one of these volcanoes erupts, I want to be as close as I can. because these are exactly the same as what people are going to Iceland and Hawaii to watch, is this style and this type of eruption.
So earthquakes that happen out here, are they earthquakes related to something else that might trigger eruptions out here, or are they earthquakes indicating movement of like the magma bodies that are under these?
Yeah, the earthquakes would just tell us that the rocks are breaking.
Okay.
And those earthquakes, like you said, could be generated from either magma moving and pushing on the rock and breaking rock, or those earthquakes could be generated by tectonic stresses and sort of typical fault behavior. And you really wouldn't know for sure if we did have earthquakes in this area until we had like a second signal, and that might be something like ground deformation. If we saw that the ground was swelling, inflating, that would indicate that magma's moving up into the subsurface and causing those changes.
Yeah.
So I hope you have a new appreciation for bombs now, volcanic bombs that is. And be sure to check out Shawn's channel for more geology explained. And if you want to explore this region on your own, get your copies of the Geology Underfoot and Roadside Geology of Idaho books, which are both linked below.